Welcome. Today is the 26th day of Tammuz, the 1st of August. We're up to the 5th reading of the two parashot together, Matot and Massei. And today's reading is one of the most important readings, maybe one could say, at least in a contemporary manner, of the entire Torah. And the reason for this is that in this reading, Moses gives us some insight into the importance of inheriting the entire land of Israel and the importance of ensuring that it remain in our hands. There is a phenomenon here that I don't think appears anywhere else in any kind of sacred writing, religious writing of any nature, at least not that I've come across, although it's very dangerous to say there's nothing like this in the rest of the world, because you can always find another example of something, but I'm not aware of anything like this. And our reading, I think, is a solitary example of the borders of the land being written into the text of the Torah. That the very borders are part of the religious practice. And there are mentions in other places, maybe other systems of belief, that whatever you conquer is yours or something like that. But there's nothing that says, these are the borders that you need to conquer. This is the land that God has given you. And most of our reading is dedicated to that. But before Moses tells us about the boundaries of the land, as we said, he gives us some principles. And he says like this, Numbers 33, verse 50. God spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab at the Jordan River opposite Jericho, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them," so this is what Moses spoke to us, "when you cross the Jordan into Canaan, you must drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you." As opposed to some thinking, there's no necessity of destroying the inhabitants of the land, but there is a necessity of driving them out. They cannot live with us together here. You must destroy all their temples, destroy their molten idols, and demolish their platforms. This is talking about the time when the land of Canaan was full of Canaanites, the 7 nations. And these 7 nations, they were idolatrous. And so the idea here is you can't let these people remain with you, because eventually they will take over your mind, your belief. You will follow their ways. You will marry them. And in that way, you'll stray from God. So that's the usual thinking, that the reason you have to drive them out is because of their idolatry. And so Moses says, if you clear out the land, you will settle it, for I have given you the land to take possession of it. You will give the land as an inheritance to your families by lot. You will give a large inheritance to the large family or tribe, and you will give a smaller inheritance to the small one. Wherever the lot falls for a person will be his inheritance. You will inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. You will inherit according to the... Okay. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those who you leave over will become spikes in your eyes and thorns on your sides, and they will harass you in the land in which you settle. And it will be that what I had intended to do to them, I will do to you. What's going on here? We thought that the problem was idolatry. But God says to Moses to tell the Israelites, it's much more than just idolatry. They won't want to share the land with you. This will never happen. If you think that you can somehow live together and make a high fence between you and them, or figure out some other way, and you'll be very strong in your worship of God, and you won't be influenced by them, says that's not going to happen. Eventually, if you do not inherit the land completely and drive them out, they will destroy you. They'll do everything they can to fight over this land with you. And like he says, there'll be spikes in your eyes and thorns in your sides. But the worst of all is that God will do to you what he intended to do to them. And there's a very big difference between the first time when Joshua took the Israelites into the land of Israel and the second time. The second time was after the Babylonian exile. When the Babylonian exile occurred, and most of the Jews were exiled to Babylon and to other places, when they came back, they didn't fight a war to take possession of the land. They possessed the land through either purchasing it, or when it was empty, by tilling it, by working the land. And that's a different type of possession. So the first time was possession by war. The second time was possession by, one could say, legal possession. And legal possession, say the sages, is actually better than the possession by war. The reason for that is because the sages already understood, and they were already living in Roman times, that there would be a change in the way that the world worked, and hopefully things would follow some kind of law that would make violence unnecessary, and that people would enforce law instead of enforce things by violence. And so they say in the Talmud that possession of the land by legal means is better in the end than possession by war, because possession by war can then be contested again. That's basically what the Torah is saying, that when you come to possess the land by war, then you should know that not everybody's going to be very happy, and they will fight back. And that's why in the end, they're going to fight you, and you're not going to be able to take possession. So you need to know that if you're in a state of war, you have to get rid of everyone who's there. You can't let them stay, because they will fight you, because war breeds war. On the other hand, there's a hope that if the possession is done by legal means, and the world becomes more civilized, then legal means are enforced without the need to go to war again, hopefully. That also doesn't always work, we know that. The biggest problem is when it seems that it's some kind of mix of the two, some hybrid reality where there's a legal side to it, and there is a war side to it, and then things become very confused. But, says the Torah, whenever you possess something by a battle, then you need to know that you're probably not finished. And the side that lost, unless you really exile them somewhere very distant where they won't trouble you, will come back to fight you. So there's this very simple human truth in these verses. And it's saying, when the possession is done by war, you better make sure that whoever you fought is not anywhere near where you are, because they will be spikes in your eyes and thorns in your sides. However, when the possession is legal, when the possession is done by either purchasing land or by working the land, which is the real way of sometimes they call it squatters' rights, but there's a lot of legal jargon that I'm not very well aware of in English, what it's called, but it means that when a person is called a chazakah in Hebrew, when a person is working a land and there's no one contesting it, then after a certain amount of time it's considered to be their land, and it's a very strong legal argument, and usually cannot be overturned. So when there's legal possession, it's much better, because hopefully you can live in peace even with people that are around you. All this requires three things to happen. And when the land was actually divided up between the tribes, all three methods were used. And the description in the Talmud is that Elazar the high priest donned the Urim V'Tumim, the breastplate of the high priest, and Joshua and the entire Jewish people stood before him. A ballad of the tribes and a ballad of the borders stood beside him. Elazar would predict the matches through divine spirit. Looking at the Urim V'Tumim, looking at the breastplate, he would say by his divine spirit what would come up in the ballot of the tribe and what would come up in the ballot of the borders of the tribes, the different inherited parcels. And he would say, for example, Zvulun will be drawn from the ballot of the tribes, and the border of Acre, meaning Akko, will be drawn with him. And then he drew a lot from the ballot of the tribes, and Zvulun was in hand. He drew a lot from the ballot of the borders, and the border of Acre was in his hand. And so it was for every tribe. So there's really three elements that went into this. On the one hand, Elazar saw this in his divine spirit. He saw what would happen. On the other hand, there's a ballot. And on the third hand, the two things come together in a display that God agrees with this. Meaning that sometimes a person sees something in Holy Spirit and it doesn't even happen. But here, what he saw was exactly what happened. To verify that what he's seeing in the Holy Spirit is also what God wants. And so these three things had to come together. Each one of them represents a different aspect of the life of the Jewish people. The ballots are actually built on something that makes sense. What's the idea behind the ballot? The parcels and the division into tribes. So the division into tribes is a natural division. There's 12 tribes. You have to give each tribe an inheritance. The parcels of land are also logical. They also say there's some kind of topography to the land. You can't just cut a border between the tribes in the middle of a lake or something like that. You have to work with the topography. So these two things, they work by common sense. However, putting them together was already done with more than just common sense. There was something that needed to be as a ballot, as some kind of making this happen by divine providence. But there was also the ability of Elazar to see what was going to happen. So these three things need to come together. The logical, common sense point of view, the ability to see things with the Holy Spirit that the priest saw, and finally God's statement, yes, these two things come together, and I put the inheritance together with the particular tribe that it belongs to. Now, there's a lot to develop this into. We'll just say that these three represent the fullness of one's intellect, the fullness of one's divine spirit, which is really the consciousness of the person, the soul, the what we would call the essence of the soul that's discovered, and then finally faith, which is God playing a role, which came out with the two things combining together and becoming verifying and showing that indeed this was the right direction in which the land should be divided. We call these today the fullness of the Torah of Israel, which is like the intellect, the fullness or completion or the wholeness of the Jewish people, which represents the divine spirit, and finally there is the fullness and completion and the wholeness of the faith of Israel. All three things have to be complete. All three things have to work together. And when that happens, the land is inherited in the proper way. Thanks for joining today. Hope to see you tomorrow again.